Welcome. We are here with an unusual topic and also unusual guest, Sebastian Martin, well-known remote viewer in the world. He is with us today, and you know him from his recent statements about 3i Atlas. Today we will talk about this topic and also more topics. We will have a talk and details, of course. Welcome, Sebastian.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Tuğba. Thank you. Tuğba is
Pleasure.
how you pronounce your name, right?
Yeah, Tuğba.
Tuğba. Oh, okay. Okay. So you don't
Yeah.
pronounce the G. Okay. Okay. Okay.
First of all, remote viewing is not a term we are used to hearing. So, first, I would like to ask you to briefly introduce yourself, please, and
Mhm.
also explain what remote viewing is.
Okay. Remote viewing is not a new thing. It's been around since the 70s, even sometimes even before. It originally started with the Soviets, so the Russians and then the Chinese, as they were already using psychic powers, or they were trying to do some experiments in their own labs using psychics and also telekinesis, where they could actually move objects from a
Yeah.
distance. There was a famous experiment like that, I think, in Russia, where the film got accessed by CIA, and then they just realized we need to come up with our own program. So they started developing this new concept with the Stanford University in the 70s, with Russell Targ and Al Puthoff, who basically were both scientists at Stanford University, and they came up with a design to basically just remote views, which is to see things from a distance. And they developed some kind of training using lots of psychics. One of them, funny enough, was Uri Geller from Israel. And he was actually part of the experiments to begin with, which eventually led to what's called the Stargate program. So the Stargate program was a remote viewing program led by the military, and they started training different types of, almost like psychics, but they did not believe that the word psychic was a good thing for control remote viewing, because they wanted to have impressions. So they had a target. Everything was double blind. So they basically used to have impressions, writing information on a specific target, and they were given coordinates, specific numbers, and which sometimes had nothing to do with the actual target. So they had to intuitively connect to the target and write down impressions from, feeling what they could feel from the target, and if they saw colors, if they saw shapes, and then eventually they can had an impressions as to what the target was and whatever details they could pick up on. So they had teams. They were working in teams, and so that program was accurate at about 60 to 70%. And because of the lack of accuracy, which was very close to almost like random or chance, Congress decided to shut it down in the 80s, because or the 90s, I think, because the New York Times published an article from a whistleblower who basically talked about the program, and the public was very angry for saying, why do we have to spend millions of dollars on a program like this to support psychics? So Congress shut down the funding for the military program. And what nobody knows is that the Stargate program, instead of being completely shut down, they revamped it and made it more underground. So meaning that they decided to hide it from the public, and they became self-funded. Or some of the money basically also got received from Congress was now declared as for this program, of this new Stargate program. So
Yeah.
this is where I came. That's where I came in. As I had psychic abilities right from the get-go, from a very young age. I don't do what's called control remote viewing, because the way I see things are very different. It's a bit more advanced. It's more intuitive. It's also I can see events. I can see mini movies. So I'm there. Sometimes I can see events through the eyes of someone else. So, like I said, it's very different from regular control remote viewing. And this is what led me to connect to one of the persons from CIA who followed me on social media, because I became a person of interest when I started talking about my remote viewing abilities, which at the time I had no clue. I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was
Yeah.
just having visions. They trained me to become a better remote viewer, to understand what remote viewing was. Well, before I only had psychic abilities, and so I got trained to harness those abilities to be more focused on what I was seeing on the targets. So that's what I've been doing for many years, for since 2017.
Yeah. I would also like to ask this. What is the exact difference between remote viewing and also mediumship?
Yeah. So mediumship, you can tap onto someone's life, and you may see something from the past, present, or future events. When you do remote viewing, it's way more targeted than that. Meaning that when you see an actual event, you know when it is. If it's in the past, if it's in the present or the future. As a psychic, you don't necessarily know when it's supposed to be happening. It could be blurry. It could be like having a certain insight. So it's close, but not quite the same. So for me, for example, when I see an actual event, I usually connect to the source. So I connect to the target. I could see an event. Let's say I'm asked to see um, a battlefield. I can go and see the battlefield through the eyes of a soldier, or I could see an event through the eyes of a CIA operative who already passed away, knowing that the person already died, but I could see the events when he was still alive.
Yeah.
So it's quite different.
How long have you been practicing remote viewing and how did you learn it?
Like I said, I've been practicing it since 2016. I used to have visions before, which I had one vision. I used to call it visions, but it was not truly a
Like
vision.
what? Visions like what? An
Probably heard,
example.
yeah. So in the Middle East, you probably heard of Rafik Hariri. He was the ex prime minister of Lebanon many years ago, and his car got bombed. So a van went next to him. He was already retired as a prime minister, and because of his influence on politics and so on, and maybe for re-election, he basically got killed. And a van was driving next to him, and the car, exploded, and he died. Now, what's interesting about this event, I didn't know anything of him at the time, and so there were some trials happening at La Hague
Mm.
in Europe,
Yeah.
to do with the potential assassins of this murder. And out of the blue, I saw the actual event through the eyes of someone else who was placed on a rooftop of a local building and observing the scene through a scope. So
Yeah.
seeing the face of Rafik Hariri when he rolled his window down, which is again an event that no one talked about in the media at the time, but I recognized that, and also saw the details of him being observed from different locations. And so the CIA was very keen to know how I got this information, because they didn't know me from Adam. I was a total stranger at the time, and so when they connected with me through social media to find out who I was, I became a person of interest,
Yeah.
because they didn't know me, so they had to find out who I was. I'm sure they tapped my phone. I'm sure they checked my emails. I'm sure they checked a lot of things that I wasn't aware of at the time. But when the CA officer connected to me on social media at the time, when I was doing my interviews on radio shows, I had like 10,000 people on Facebook, for example. And I didn't know anybody because I was accepting friendships on Facebook, but it doesn't mean I was interacting with anyone, or most of them. And so one day, I woke up, and so I was awake, and then I was literally moved into the body of this CIA officer in Iraq. And so she was in on a mission undercover. She was in Iraq. She was like wearing a wig and everything else, and she was at a local safe house in Baghdad. And I saw her leaving in a car. So she was on the back seat of the car, and she was looking at the scene through the back window, and she could see that there was a crowd of people. So the car was driving through a crowd of people, and there were three men that walked against the crowd, and those were in charge of the security for Iraq, and they were actually going towards the safe house. So they wanted to arrest her basically because she was there illegally. And
Yeah.
so and she was originally from Baghdad herself. So she's American now, but she originally came from Baghdad. So because of her ease with languages and everything else, she
Yeah.
got trained to be a very good agent.
Yeah.
And so when I connected with her, I basically just reached her out on Messenger, which is not a secure platform. And I said, I know who you are, I know what you do, and your life is in danger. That's what I wrote. And I said,
Oh,
you need to get out. That's what I said.
what happened?
So for 4 weeks, she didn't contact me at all. And then one day I was she going on a ferry, going across to Washington State for a different purpose. And then she just sent me a picture, and she said, "Is that the man you saw in the crowd? Out of those three men that
Yeah.
walked against the crowd?" And I said, "Yeah, that's exactly him, but he was wearing different clothes, obviously."
Yeah.
And she said, "Thank you." That's what she said. And then I had to wait, I don't know, a few weeks, maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, she sent me a newspaper article. And she said, "What do you see from this newspaper article?" And it was about two women in Jordan who committed suicide and jumping off the top of a building. And it explained about who they were. One of them was a journalist, pretty high up people, like well-known
Yeah.
people. So it became famous. And when I was reading the article, once again, I was seeing the event like a mini movie. I was able to delve into their lives and know in detail why they were killed. Not they didn't commit suicide. They were pushed by two soldiers. And so when I related what I was able to see while I was reading the article, so I was being distracted, which is another key of remote viewing, by the way. When you do remote viewing, you need to be slightly uh, distracted in order to focus on the real target, which is why they give you all of these numbers, which have nothing to do with the actual target. So you don't use your logical mind, you use your creativity or your psychic abilities, basically. And
Yeah.
so when I saw that and I described what I saw, she replied to me saying, "Well, that's very interesting. We knew of one soldier, not two." So she knew exactly what happened to these two women. She wanted to find out what I was seeing from this article. And so after a while, and she tested me for a long time with those articles. And then at
Yeah.
the end, she said, "I think that what you're doing is remote viewing." That's what she said to me. So
Wow.
she harnessed it, and she was able to enhance it by targeting more specific scenes, and sometimes they were harder. And as time went by, this lasted for years, and I was not being paid for any of this. At the time, I was just being questioned, and I was keen to play the game because it was interesting to me, and she
Yeah.
was able to validate whatever I could see. So I like the validation part. To me, that was very important. In order to feel better for what I was seeing, I needed the validation. And out of all these years, I never got it wrong once, not once. So the probability of that from like the 60 to 70% of regular remote viewing, that was quite unusual for them. And so I became one of the best remote viewers on the program.
Yeah. I'm
So I think
shocked.
there's another person like me who does remote viewing who is almost as good as me. So
Yeah.
what happened was I got involved in a team. So it was not happening right away. So what happened then was I was literally seeing an event, and I was relating the event to this agent, and I was not part of the mission. And so I became part of the mission because I could see details from that specific mission in action. And so they couldn't get rid of me, and I was providing details that were important and sometimes crucial, that they had to involve me in the missions. So I got more and more and more involved into very secretive stuff that sometimes they were beyond top secret, because
Yeah.
what I was accessing was something that was more belonging towards what's called the secret space program. Basically, how it all started for me. I saved
Wow.
lives. I mean, I saved thousands of
Yeah.
lives, and not just that. I got involved in rescue missions for children too, for like sex trafficking. I also rescued people from kidnapping. I saved this agent lives 3 times, since we've been working together. So
Oh.
it's not random, and whenever I see things, it does save his lives. To the detriment of others who basically could not succeed in what they were trying to achieve.
So I'm lucky to know you. Who
Well,
knows? Who knows what you will see? Really?
we're gonna be diving deeper into like through Atlas. You mentioned that we're gonna be going over what went viral and what truly happened after the facts, and where I got things wrong, because for the first time there was an actual timeline that changed and deviated, but I
Yeah.
saw it. I saw it when it happened, and no one saw it, and I will explain why. But before that, we can carry on with the other questions.
Yeah, okay, okay. But we slowly move to Triad Atlas. It's time, actually. You drew a lot of
Okay.
attention with your statements about Triad Atlas, with your saying that you viewed Triad Atlas and also described what you saw inside. And also, can you tell us how that remote viewing session happened and when was it?
Yeah, so what's interesting is back in June of 2025, 3 Atlas was not known to the Atlas telescope. And the scientists didn't know its existence, but I already knew about its existence back in
Yeah.
June. Because then I was approached to remote view 3 Atlas before it was even known by the Atlas telescope. And
Oh my
the
God.
the, re- the reason being is it was already known by the intelligence services since March of 2025, but
Hmm.
NASA made it public in July when they
Oh my
said,
God.
well, the telescope detected these interstellar objects coming through our solar system. This was already known back in March. But again, the public was only being aware of that much later on, because they had to find out what was truly happening with this object, what it was, and they realized that it was not an actual object. So they already knew before they even approached me. I only confirmed based on the information I provided. They were able to target 3 Atlas as a potential threat to humanity. Well,
Yeah.
before they had no idea. They had no clue as to what it was. They knew it was an alien object of some kind, carrying some technology of some kind, but they didn't know exactly what it was, what was on board, and where it came from. So that's what I was tasked to do in the first place. So back in June, I had some very hard time dealing with this, because the energy frequency emanating from 3 Atlas, it was something that I was very familiar with. At some point in time during my missions in 2017, 2018, I got attacked by what's called the Draco Reptilians psychically. So the psionic attacks that those reptilians do, it acts like a 5G tower, cell tower, when basically they emit a signal and
Yeah.
then accessing a network. So it basically spreads out through everybody that the target knows. So if I know people in my cell, like doing remote viewing, all the remote viewers I was working with were attacked at the same time. So it was not
Yeah.
just me, but it doesn't mean that they knew who was the source of that attack. I knew because I got involved into the vision of the Stargate that came from Iraq, that was moved out of the country, and I was tasked to remote view this Stargate. I'm talking about the Stargate that you like a portal, the things that people can travel through. And it was also alien technology from the Anunnaki. So I got involved in that, and that was belonging to the SSP directly. So I was involved in an SSP mission, and without being an SSP employee or member, but I got involved in that because I could tap onto it. That's basically what happened. Uh, and so the Stargate was protected by a white Draco Reptilian. And when I remote view the Stargate, being connected to it, because they wanted me to find out if the Stargate was being in use, if it missed any components, because some of the members from the secret space program at the time removed two components from that Stargate. And that was during the Gulf War. So it was many years ago. And when that Stargate got removed, it got stolen along the way by an actual rogue faction from the SSP, from the secret space program. And they moved it to Eastern Europe. And so it was heavily guarded. Sounds like science fiction to most people, but I was literally seeing that object and I knew there were two missing components. So I was actually tasked to remove or retrieve those two components in Africa. So there were teams of Navy SEALs and soldiers that were dispatched to Africa, and those missions got into the news. They were using different reasons for it, but that's the main reason why those people went to Nigeria in the first place. That was the reason why the U.S. soldiers went to Nigeria. Anyway, when I saw that white Draco Reptilian, he saw me right away, and he was targeting me after that. So he saw me, he looked at me straight in the eyes with his reptilian eyes.
Really? Oh my God.
And then the same night, I got nosebleeds, pounding headaches. My whole body felt like it was disintegrating for 4.5 hours straight. I don't wish it on anyone. But this was before I knew how to protect myself, how to
Yeah.
really defend myself from those attacks. Now I know. By the time I was a newbie, I was just starting remote viewing. I was just a newbie. So the only thing I could do was to protect myself from the attacks by basically checking on my energy field and trying to heal myself. That's the only thing that I knew about that I could do. Looking at my Kundalini energy, and at the time, my Kundalini energy was going counterclockwise, very slowly. And so I had to reverse the effects of the Kundalini energy going clockwise to heal myself. As I was doing that, the psionic attack kept going nonstop, like waves, like woo, woo, like going towards me. And so after 4.5 hours of trying to fight it off, I got really tired of it and I got angry. And so when I got angry, I basically saw myself going through a tunnel, like a black tunnel, and I saw the top of the skull of that white Draco reptilian. And I blasted him with white light energy, source energy. And so I've been doing that for years. I know how to do those kind of things. Intuitively speaking, there were many other types of stories like that where my life got threatened, physically speaking, and I had to protect myself using white light energy to avoid being harmed. So I've done that many times before, but this was new. So the attack stopped right away, and everybody in my cell group contacted me right away saying, what's happening, Sebastian? The attack stopped, and they didn't know why, right? So this is how these attacks were spreading like a 5G network. It was accessing my network, and they were all being attacked at the same time from one individual.
Oh my God.
So they were very powerful. So at the time, I felt really good about myself, thinking, "Oh, great! I was able to survive this, and I was able to defend myself." But so little did I know that a week later, I went to a board meeting in New York City. And my career as a businessman, I started off as a businessman. I was in charge of a multinational with offices in the U.S., Canada, New Zealand, England, and so I was managing a big team of people selling Manuka honey from New Zealand. This was
Yeah.
my main core business. And so I also had like a farm, and I was doing organic produce and all of that. So I was doing a lot of things. So for me, all I cared about at the time, back in 2016, even 2011, was just making money and making the next million. So anything to do with UFOs, Draco reptilians, psychic attacks, remote viewing, none of that really mattered to me. I basically just, I couldn't care less about any of this. It was
Yeah.
totally new to me. When I went to New York a week later, I basically was doing my business. I went to see a Broadway show, and then I went back to my hotel. I was ready to go back to Canada the next day. And when I came back to my hotel bedroom, I removed my pants. I was about to have a shower, and then I saw this gash on my leg. And it was a long streak, red streak, that basically a big, big, deep scratch. That it was not bleeding, but it was still stinging when I was having my shower. So it was deep enough to see that it was something that caused it. I didn't know what it was. So I thought, oh, I don't know, maybe I scratched myself somewhere. And so I went to bed, and that's when the attack started again, right
Oh
away,
my God.
like in full force, going from nothing, feeling
Maybe it
peaceful,
was a
happy,
message.
There was no message then, no. So basically, I simply got attacked because I retaliated from the Draco Reptilian attack. So I basically got full blown attacked. And when I closed my eyes, doing the same thing again, I was feeling the same way. I closed my eyes and I could see my Kundalini again going counterclockwise. But I went deeper. I went inside of my bloodstream. And I could see that there was nanotechnology floating through my bloodstream. And that was like a green and white capsule. And again, that was one out of many, and it was floating through my bloodstream. So it
Yeah.
was nanotechnology that was inserted to me somehow. And then I just came to realize when I saw that right away, the intuition said it was an ice gun. And so they used a nice bullet to scratch my leg, untraceable, that contained nanotechnology that went through the gap and then into my bloodstream. And so that's how I got attacked or poisoned, and while being attacked at the same time. So I was being psychically attacked and I was poisoned at the same time.
Oh
So
my God.
this was the first time and the only time in my entire life that I had regrets, knowing that I would not be able to say goodbye to my kids.
Oh,
So I knew I was going to die. That's basically how it felt like. And so after 3 hours of battling this, I literally gave up and I closed my eyes. And so I lost consciousness. I don't know if I died or not, but all I remember is like when I opened my eyes, I felt like new. I felt like I could just fly off the curb of the street. It was
yeah.
exhilarating. I felt completely different. So I went back on the airplane, back to Canada, and the voice of that Draco Reptilian spoke to me and said, now you can see what we can do to you. Leave us alone and we'll let you be.
Oh,
Yeah. So that really scared me, actually,
yeah.
because when I came back, I thought, I'm not doing remote viewing again. And I gave it up for almost 2 to 3 years. And I was being approached all the time, say, can you help us with that? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I said, no, sorry. I just value my family too much. I don't want to do any of this. So in the meantime, I've used those 2 to 3 years to perfect myself, not just in remote viewing, but also in protecting myself
Yeah.
instead of just healing myself. So I was able to understand a few things. For example, I was able to understand timelines and also understanding the frequencies of timelines. So each timeline had a different frequency, same as the Draco Reptilians. By this attack, two attacks, I was able to connect to their frequency as well. And so to cut the story short, when I saw 3 Atlas, I knew this was Draco Reptilian because I picked up on the same frequency. That's when I knew. And that was back in June.
Yeah.
So when I shared what I knew to the agents, and so that went to the White House, it went to the SSP people. All of these people basically were just like alarmed because they didn't know what it was. They received messages. So in the meantime, I went to China on a trip with my partner, and I was basically in China, and then I got contacted by those people saying, what's happening? Can you tell us more? And they said we received a message from NASA. Basically, NSA received messages from 3 Atlas, and they were pondering on how to decipher the message because it was all cryptid and it was all I think it was using binary codes, I think. So they had
Hmm.
they had some decryptions to make, and they realized that the frequency on the band it was sent was a known band from another race of aliens that they already encountered or they already had experience with. So they recognized that this was alien, message, not from Earth. It was definitely from space. They told me that, and when I saw Three Atlas back in July, August. I was basically just seeing they were asking me, say, can you please go on the inside of Three Atlas and remote view Three Atlas for us? Because at that time they already knew that it was Draco Reptilian. That's what I picked up on back in June. They wanted more details about the craft and what was its intention. What did they want to do?
Yeah.
So when I went on board, I was able to remote view it very well. And the reason why I did that is because I was cloaking my energy field using the Draco frequency energy field to go on board. That's how I was able to be allowed in. Many remote viewers were trying to do the same thing and they got booted out or they got wrong messages or false messages because they don't share the same frequency, therefore they could be lied to. And this is what happened for many people online when they were saying, oh, this is Pleiadian, there are nice friends, people coming in, they're here to raise our frequency, blah, blah, blah. All of this
Yeah.
was just deception from the direct reptilians, so they could actually deceive those channelers, psychics, all the people that were picking up on their energy because they didn't know any better. So they just picked up on whatever, they wanted to see. And so for me, I was not fooled and I was able to go on board and I could see the technology, the platform, the walls, everything was nanotech. It was also using
Yeah.
black goo. And the black goo was as a substance can be used as a metal. It can be used as a surface, a hard surface, but it can be also shaped. So if they send through AI, they can dictate what shape the ship should take. So if they want to go from like a cruising ship through space, it will have a certain shape. If they want to model it into like a warship, then the whole ship will transform to look like a warship. Do you understand what I mean? So it's malleable enough that they can change its structure based on will, based on AI technology. The whole command module on the front has nobody there. It's all 100% controlled by AI technology.
Oh my God.
So the 5 million Draco reptilians that I saw in species were in pods, and they were taking no room, no food, no water. They were basically just sleeping in hibernation, and they were doing that for a long time because that's the best way to travel. They don't need to take space. So
Did
they
you
had
feel any fear this time?
no fear, no fear, because I was protected. They were not
Yeah,
there to
I know.
attack me.
Yeah.
They never,
You are
they
you were
never.
like invisible, huh?
Yes,
You
they
were
never
like,
attacked
yeah.
me. They recognized me as one of theirs.
Yeah, I
That's how I
understand. The
appeared. That's how I
frequency,
appeared on
yeah.
board.
Yeah.
My energy field was basically direct reptilians when I came on board of Three Atlas.
Yeah.
So they could not detect me. They didn't see me as a threat. So I was able to see everything exactly the way I'm seeing you right now on the screen. I was seeing the whole thing like a mini movie. I could see the whole thing. So when I reported that, that basically set the alarm bells for the intelligence community and the secret space program. They were already using reverse engineered crafts that were able to go
Hmm.
into space and travel alongside Three Atlas. In fact, 9 of those crafts were detected by some telescope at some point until they vanished. So those objects appeared and disappeared, and so the scientist community believed that was just a fluke from the equipment that they were using. But it was not a fluke. They were actual SSP crafts from the Galactic Federation of Light. They were flying alongside Three Atlas, like escorting it, pretty much like the same way as jets would escort a hijacked airplane before being shot down. That's exactly what they were doing. They were trailing it, going at the same speed as Three Atlas to find out what was his next maneuver. That was the goal. So when I got involved in that, and I went on Gaia TV and I spoke about this publicly, it became viral. It went all over the place, translated in so many languages. Lots of people have been saying, no, this is not real. We saw something completely different. We believe they are the Pleiadians or the Arcturians or the Andromedans, or maybe some people even said that. There were so many different scenarios, as you know. There's so many different
Yeah.
concepts. And what's interesting is that, like, you interviewed Professor Avi Loeb, and Avi Loeb has access to
Yeah.
almost the same information as I do. So he's being
Yeah.
told what's also happening behind closed doors. That's the reason why he's so confident in knowing what this is. He can't say too much because he has a job to keep, and he has to remain scientific about his studies and his analysis. But he has heard those messages. He knows that NASA or NSA received those messages, but he can't disclose too much about it. He's
Yeah.
been told about the direct reptilians as well. He's been told a lot of things, but he can't say publicly what this is all about because he has to, keep his title. Anyway, what's interesting from that, and so everything progressed. And so in November 8th of 2025, something major happened. And you probably heard and seen solar flares, the CMEs that occurred in the sky. You could see those aurora borealis occurring, in the northern hemisphere, where you could see that there were some atmospheric disturbances, storms, like solar storms. Lots of people witness those online. You can see it, in many different parts of the world. What nobody knows is on November 8th, 3 Atlas emitted some plasma flares towards the sun and towards the Galactic Federation of Light's forces to deter them and try to attack, or they basically were making an offensive attack towards them on that day, November 8th. So this is when the sun got a black spot on it, from the plasma jets emitting from 3 Atlas. Now, you have to realize that 3 Atlas at the time was
Yeah.
millions of miles away from the sun. And yet those plasma jets reached the sun within less than a day, right? So
Yeah.
very fast. And that came from 3 Atlas. It didn't come from somewhere else. So the question is, how can 3 Atlas retain its structure without being demolished from the sun rays, from the solar flares that the sun had? 3 Atlas at some point in time was in the middle of a solar flare that the burst reached out to 3 Atlas. It should have destroyed it. It should have partialed it and make it into smaller, pieces instead of remaining whole.
Yeah.
But it stayed whole, and nobody knows why. And then he kept changing colors, and he kept speeding up, and none of these. Avi Loeb detected 16 anomalies to date. There's
Yeah.
not a 1% chance in the universe that this is natural, not 1%. And he has gone through every single detail, so he knows. The Loeb scale went up from like 4 to now 6, maybe 7 or 8 now. Who knows? But the fact is, what nobody knew by November 8th is that the Galactic Alliance, and we're going to be covering this in more details, the Galactic Federation of Light works with the Secret Space Program. The Galactic Federation is a known organization that stays on Earth. They work very closely with many countries, but not directly with the leaders of these countries. They only work with carrier officers from different nations who are also part of what's called the Secret Space Program, which is international. And so the reason why they benefit from these alien technologies is because they do reverse engineer whatever down crafts that they have, or whatever probes or even crafts that are coming to Earth to, basically just detect and as a probe to analyze the configuration of Earth and everything else. But when these probes or these crafts are not welcomed, the Galactic Federation of Light takes care of them, and they just down them using those reversed engineer technologies that the Secret Space Program is using daily. So their role and their mission is to protect Earth from
Yeah.
outside sources. That's their main mission. Okay.
Galactic Federation's mission, yeah.
That's their job. Same as the SSP. The SSP also works off-world, protecting humanity from outside threats. So
Yeah.
that's one aspect of the aliens. Then there's the Galactic Alliance.
What is the
Alliance is
difference?
yes.
Yeah.
So the Galactic Alliance is not directly involved with contacting humanity. They are not there to help those organizations on Earth, because their job is to keep an eye on all the star seeds on this planet. Like, we are an experiment to them. So what they do is they send out some soul of their own beings. So let me backtrack a bit for you, because it's a bit more complicated than
Okay.
that. So
Okay.
think of yourself as a human being with a soul coming from source. Source is the origin of life in the universe and the
Mhm.
multiverse, not just the universe. And then from that, the source energy, as a soul, you volunteer to incarnate as a human being, or you decide to incarnate as a Pleiadian being, for example. This is my life. This is what my whole experience is all about. I became aware of that in 2011, when I had an encounter in my living room from a Pleiadian being who came to see me and introduced himself as from the Galactic Alliance. He didn't say, I'm Zo from the Galactic Federation of Light. He said, I'm Zo from the Galactic Alliance. Now, going back to 2011, I knew nothing of the UFO world. I knew nothing of the Galactic Federation. I didn't know even it even existed.